We've got a lot of ground to cover with Dr. Scott Huffmon from Winthrop University. He is the director of the Winthrop Political Poll and a political science professor. And Dr. Huffmon, we're going to get right to it. Of course, you're joining us here on Palmetto Mornings following the announcement that the current president, Joe Biden, has decided to pull out of the 2024 race. So that brings us to a whole list of many questions. Some of these questions you've addressed on your social media page. So we're just going to kind of follow right along here. So Joe Biden has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him as a Democratic presidential nominee. Is it as cut and dry as that? Does she automatically become the nominee?
No, but she definitely has the inside track, but it is not fait accompli. I mean, it is possible for other people to throw their hats in the ring. However, several of the people who would be on the short list to be a competitor for the presidential nominee have already endorsed her. But it's not an absolute.
Well, it also comes down to money at this point in the game. And the Harris-Biden team, they have access to that money together, correct?
Correct. So her name was part of the PAC or the campaign that raised the money. So she has immediate access to it. If it wasn't her for the presidential candidate, they would have to follow the Federal Election Commission rules, which is either to offer it back or one candidate can only give $5,000 to another candidate, or give it directly to the Democratic National Party, who could then only coordinate about $32 million with the candidate. So it makes more sense financially if she stays in the race as the presidential nominee. And
she has said in a statement that she will intend to run as the nominee and she will work to earn the votes. So she knows that this is not a given. Dr. Huffmon, I'm seeing a lot of somewhat confusion in the world where people are voting to endorse her. Endorsing is much different than her getting the nominee, correct? Like endorsing is just saying we support.
Absolutely. Now, some of these endorsements are important because these are people who had been, named by political pundits as potential opponents at a convention. But that does not mean that the state that they're from can or will give their delegates to Kamala Harris just because, say, the governor of the state endorsed her.
Well, that brings us to another question. Here in South Carolina, if those that voted in the primary wanted their delegate votes to go to President Joe Biden, he is no longer on the ticket. So at the DNC, when they do the roll call, will the state have the option of giving those delegates to Harris or anyone else? What does that look like?
Yeah, most of the states where there was a primary, those candidates are pledged but not bound. So a couple of states are bound until the second, unless there's a second vote. So they could easily just switch to another candidate even on the first vote. And of course, in the primaries, there wasn't a real contest anyway. So they can switch even on the first vote for most states.
And I've also seen a lot of folks on social media talking about, is this fair? So that brings us, is this unfair to folks who voted in the Democratic primaries?
Well, you have to know a little bit about the history of nominating presidential candidates. First off, we didn't have political parties. The only reason we have political parties and two political parties is an accident of the Constitution, which our founding fathers didn't realize at the time, and that's a whole other show. But it was originally done with a caucus in a literal smoke-filled back room. In fact, caucus comes from the Greek word for drinking cup. So that tells you how it's happened. Then it was conventions with only the political leaders from a state getting to vote. Then it was primaries, a few primaries, but they were not beholden to that. Estes Kefauver in 1952 won 15 out of 17 Democratic primaries, and yet he didn't get the nomination. Now we are mainly a primaries, but South Carolina didn't even have its first presidential primary until 1980. So the primaries are a new invention anyway, and the parties can change their rules, and both have at various times.
We're speaking with Dr. Scott Huffmon from Winthrop University. He's the director of the Winthrop Political Poll and a political science professor. Will we see other people come out and challenge Vice President Kamala Harris to become the Democratic nominee?
It is entirely possible. I think it's less likely because the party will push them not to, because she has name recognition that they don't, and she has immediate money to the campaign money raised by the Biden-Harris campaign. Whereas, Beshear, who's a Republican president in Kentucky, a generally red state, there's reasons to put his name forward, but he would face the challenge of getting name recognition in the whole country as well as raising funds. He'd actually be a pretty good VP pick because he could go toe-to-toe with J.D. Vance in the Rust Belt states.
Of course, we're not in the mind frame of our president, Joe Biden. Many people said if he was going to make the decision, he should have done it earlier to save all of the just confusion that's happening right now.
Well, there's two answers to that. One is let the Republicans have their primary so that they have shot all their ammunition at Biden, and now now Kamala Harris is going on. Now they've done research on Kamala Harris because whoever their VP pick was going to have to face her. The other is bowing to the acknowledgement of age and cognitive decline. Now Republicans often won't admit it, but Trump has cognitive decline as well. The difference is when Biden had it, he would start getting lost and looking lost. When Trump has it, he keeps on with his energy and just tells a strange story. This year, it's about a shark and a battery or something. But, they neither are as sharp as they used to be. And frankly, neither are as sharp as my 94-year-old dad. But, that was quite more obvious with Biden than it was with Trump.
So in terms of just the political realm, is this a monkey wrench thrown in the process of nominating a candidate for a political party?
Well, it's, people who were alive during 1968 and the Democratic primary of then, this is still going to go a lot smoother than that. And of course, Johnson had pulled out and the nomination was open, and that led to massive changes within the party and literal riots on the outside of it. So it's not as wholly unprecedented as people think. The 1880 Republican primary, a Republican convention went to 32 votes before James Garfield was named as the nominee, and his primary within the party opponent, Chester Arthur, was named as his VP running mate. This is not unprecedented, as people think.
All right. Well, we'll see how this all plays out. The Democratic National Convention will take place August the 19th through the 22nd in Chicago, Illinois.
Buy your popcorn now.
Yeah, for sure. Dr. Scott Huffmon, thank you so much. A very busy man today. In fact, he's leaving us now. He's got another interview to go to. Dr. Huffmon, thank you so much.